And last but not least, there was the Sugar Bowl. Dan Rubenstein, this game was friggin' nuts. 39-34 was your final. It was a nail biter. It was a thriller. It had everything you could possibly want from a game of this magnitude. Ole Miss gets revenge on the Georgia Bulldogs. 39-34 again is your final. Wow. We are recording this about 5 minutes after the game went final.
Yes.
I am still catching my breath. I'd imagine McDonough and McElroy in the booth are doing exactly the same.
Yeah.
I am getting text messages from friends. I am seeing Twitter go by like it's the friggin' Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
This was a baller way to close out the first day of the year of our Lord 2026, Dan.
Oh,
wow.
2026. Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
I treated the end of this game like I was watching the final season of Breaking Bad, and I have no rooting interest in either Georgia nor Ole Miss. And I was eating tortilla chips like my life depended on it. I was eating chocolates. I was just pacing around the room. This game took it all, like Walt's back in New Mexico. It took it all out of me, and in the best possible way. I don't know how to describe the rhythms of this game at all, other than both of these teams rode waves of fury, I guess you could say.
That's a great way to put it.
It was, I mean, look, the mountain that, I wouldn't even say that Ole Miss climbed a mountain to come back in this game, because the Ole Miss defense did a reasonable job for a chunk of this game, holding Georgia's offense not down, but at least surviving for longer stretches. But Georgia had the scoop and score, which pushed it to, I want to say, 21-12, right in that region.
That's right. Yep.
And then in the second half, Georgia went cold and Ole Miss got hot all at the same time. What I took from this was every time Georgia needed some kind of burst, there was Nate Frazier or there was Zachariah Branch. And Gunnar Stockton made plays. He wasn't huge with his legs. It was just two heavyweights wailing on each other the entire time. Nobody was dancing around. Nobody was doing anything. And then when it comes down to it, and Trinidad Chambliss is making play after play, like, for my money, the play where Trinidad Chambliss is scrambling and then in the last possible millisecond just sort of flicks the ball.
Just floats it, right? A little floater.
But it was like the backhand, like, option, like it was so perfect. And it's Kejuan Lacey with a bum shoulder, and the Ole Miss players, I'm just like it's free-form jazz in the worst possible way is how I'm describing this game. But that's where my mind is. Like, there is a super ball bouncing around my brain right now thinking about this game. And the speed on display, the kicking in this game, good and bad, was huge, especially for Ole Miss early. It was huge in a good way. It felt chaotic in the best possible way, and I'm glad it ended like it did, because at least it didn't end with like a catastrophic error. It ended with Ole Miss success.
It really did. I mean, again, this game was crazy.
Yeah.
This game was crazy. Georgia kicked a short field goal late after a nice defensive stand from Ole Miss. That knotted the game up at 34 apiece. Ole Miss gets the ball back on, what was that, a third down play? A beautiful throw from Trinidad Chambliss right over the top that got them deep into field goal territory. And then Lucas Carniero bang through a 49-yarder. Speaking of a mega leg, that dude's got a howitzer.
Mm-hmm.
That made it 37-34. And then there were some hijinks at the end. Georgia trying to make something happen on the ensuing kickoff. They try a backwards pass, a lateral that hits the pylon, gets ruled a safety, makes it 39-34. But because of when it occurred, there was 1 second left on the clock. That gave Georgia an opportunity to not only attempt, but then recover an onside kick. Because the guy who recovered the onside kick was grounded, no time ran off the clock. That set up one final play. All sorts of crap is out on the field. Confetti, ice, Gatorade, whatever they threw on Pete Golding after they thought they won the game before, a few minutes before. And then there was just sort of like a haze of back and forth lateraling where I'm wondering, is this going to be a Miami Duke situation where we have a crazy play, perhaps the band on the field, Cal Stanford, that does not come to fruition. Eventually, Ole Miss gets the win here. I can only imagine the range of emotions you had if you were a fan of a team in this game. And I'll speak to it from the Ole Miss side of things
Sure.
because I was watching from that perspective, if only because you and I had Ole Miss in the points. I think you came damn near close to guessing the exact final score.
I had them outright. I had the over. I had it was like 38-35, 35-33, something like that. And I guess I just dumb luck. I went 4 for 4 against the spread this weekend.
I mean, because the way the game ended and the high that I'm sure Ole Miss fans are on now as they go into the semifinal against Miami, some of the early game stuff is probably going to be water under the bridge. But early on, this was also a very frustrating watch for Ole Miss fans because for a minute there, I thought this was going to be death by 1,000 cuts. There was the very big mistake, which you mentioned towards the end of the first half. Kawan Lacey coughs it up. It goes back for a scoop and score. Elijah Griffin runs it for like 47 yards to make it 21-12. But beyond that, there were dropped passes. Beyond that, there were missed tackles. Beyond that, there were some of those Gunnar Stockton third down conversions that drive you batty because it looks like you have them and then suddenly you don't. Yeah. There was also a botched sequence, which Greg McElroy rightfully brought up at the end of the game. We saw it at the end of the first half, where instead of going out of bounds, Daquan Wright stayed inbounds.
Yeah, it was weird. It was very specifically cutting back inbounds as well.
It was a conscious decision. I don't know if he didn't know where the clock was at or thought he could get to the first down. I don't know what was going on there, but they were out of timeouts. That could have given them 3 points with the way Carniero was kicking. So there were a bunch of issues that took place earlier on in this game for Ole Miss. I'm not going to say that they fully cleared up the deeper we got into this one, but certainly the way Trinidad Chambliss played down the stretch. I mean, he's not going to remember any of this. I wonder if he was even conscious down the stretch with how he was playing. That was ridiculous.
To be clear, he was great in the first matchup and then went ice cold. And Ole Miss's offense went into a shell in the fourth quarter. He was 1 of 10 in the fourth quarter in that first matchup in Athens. And so for him to light up the Georgia defense like he was able to do, and he was rotating out. Obviously, we talked about the improvising thing, but taking shots. This was not like screens with yards after the catch, yards after contact, whatever. Taking shots, rolling out and hitting dudes in stride, and on the biggest possible stage that Ole Miss has ever played in, at least in the modern era, and certainly the biggest stage he's ever played on. And Pete Golding in his second game as a head coach of Ole Miss, like so many different things. You have Trey Wallace transferring in this first year, making play after play, Dejon Stribling, Kewan Lacey, right? So it's like kind of a patchwork situation, but everything is like pointed in the same direction in that fourth quarter that Ole Miss can basically do no wrong. And by the way, it was Dalen Everett it was Elijah Griffin who forced the fumble, Dalen Everett who ran the ball back.
Who ran it back, yeah, excuse me.
The scoop and score, to just be specific.
Right.
But yeah, the field goal kicking that Georgia was able to come back. They go down 10 with all of the momentum, like just moving very dramatically towards Ole Miss to come back and get that. It was like a 75-yard drive to go down 3. And then they get that field goal relatively close to tie it up. And so Ole Miss gets it back with under a minute. It's just like there's no fear with these dudes. I know you pulled the sound because Greg McElroy was talking about Trinidad Chambliss, hitting 3 after 3.
There you go.
Yeah. And it's totally true. And there were plays where the Georgia offense looked like they couldn't be stopped. Once again, the speed from Nate Frazier, just how hard he hit the lane time after time, and getting Zachariah Branch in space. And then you see a play that you think is going to ultimately decide the game or at least end Ole Miss's hopes to win this in regulation. When I want to say Zion Branch just had a huge hit on an Ole Miss receiver who sort of knocked the wind out of him at least. And you're like, man, that might have been a game-saving moment for Georgia. And ultimately it wasn't because Trinidad Chambliss makes play after play. An incredible narrative win for Ole Miss. It's hard to fully look at the defenses and say it was an incredible game, but both of these defenses made huge plays, even though this game was, 39-34. Just Ole Miss on those fourth downs, the key I think 4th and 2 was Centarian Perkins off the edge.
Yeah.
I think he forced a fumble, but ultimately it was 4th and 2. So a sack and fumble, they were basically the same thing. But the huge plays, the high leverage moments for both of these teams from these defenses when they needed stops sometimes was incredible to behold. So an incredible game. And you know what? After Oregon and 23-0, and after 38-3 Indiana, after
Yeah,
just
man.
these dominant Big Ten performances, Ty, don't pay attention to the Ohio State game. After it was nice to see it, like a really fun back and forth, like an exciting, 1-2 from these teams.
All the excitement that you wanted out of the first 3 games, we got all of it.
Yeah.
In the last game of the college football playoff quarterfinals in the Sugar Bowl. I mean, this one really had it all. And this isn't even to mention some of the decisions. I know you just referenced it briefly in passing, but some of the decisions to go for it on 4th down, Kirby Smart flying a little too close to the sun, going for it, 4th and 2 from his own 33-yard line and not getting it.
That was sort of after calling a brilliant fake punt.
I mean,
it was like a Philly special fake punt situation.
The whipsaw of emotion in this game, I think, made up for the fact. And like, we got some emails from people who were a little bit disappointed by the first round of games, the first couple games that we saw. This one, in my opinion, made up for it in a really significant way. I mean, this had everything that you want as a college football fan. And I find it hard to believe for people who stayed up to watch it that they weren't at least somewhat amused down the stretch, because whether it's a big play, whether it's weird happenings, whether it's, just all the oddities that we come to know and love about this sport, we had a chance to see all of that in like the last 15 minutes of gameplay.
Yeah. And by the way, so this game was exciting basically from the jump. Weird decisions, great plays, back and forth, seemingly over, comebacks, whatever. You see what Joel Klatt tweeted out? He said he hated every second of this game. I'm just making that up. But you froze and you were like, wait, that kind of tracks. Sorry, I'm making you cough. You're just getting off of an illness. I apologize.
Strangely believable. Continue.
I did not notice either way. No, you're absolutely right. The decision making. Look, you're on a stage like this. I honestly, the coaching by and large. Look, I know it's Charlie Weiss Jr. calling this offense all season long. Called it a great game tonight. Obviously, put Trinidad Chambliss and Kejuan Lacey in a great position to succeed. But this is still Pete Golding's second game.
Yeah.
On this stage, given everything that has happened behind the scenes, or not really behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, with Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin and everything, who apparently wanted to appear in the booth, reportedly. I don't know if you saw that story.
Of course he does. Of course he does. That's Lane for
so if you guys are interested, I'm around. Game's in state. It's not that far from Baton Rouge, New Orleans. So, I don't know if
he might do an alt cast next week. Who the hell knows?
That's true. I lost my train of thought. But Ole Miss and Pete Golding, just very cool to be thrust into this. And that was a key word here, right? On the thrust.
We were talking about thrust on targeting calls and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah. We saw a little bit of thrusting in this game as well.
But just such an unusual circumstance for Pete Golding and Ole Miss, given everything. And to come away beating Georgia in a revenge spot. Tough to beat a team twice. A good team twice in the same year. And this cemented that as well.
Let me call out one other thing, and then I do want to look a little bit forward at the next matchup for Ole Miss, because I think that's going to be really interesting on a number of different fronts. But Georgia coming into this game had so much momentum. And I hate to bring it up, and I know it's something people are going to talk an awful lot about, but this was yet another situation where a team had momentum at the end of the season, had a long layover, and then lost outright. Yeah. And Georgia, for me,
they were up at halftime by 9 points. So it's not
up at halftime. It looked as though in the first half, especially because of Ole Miss mistakes and some other things that went in Georgia's favor, it looked as if Georgia was on the precipice of maybe taking greater control of this football game.
Agree.
So it wasn't fully like they came out there and they were stone cold and it was never going to happen. Like, we have seen that circumstance before. But this was yet another circumstance where we had a team that came in really hot and found a way to lose. And for me, that is really surprising. Not that Ole Miss would keep this close, because Ole Miss is a team of athletes, and that first game was really close as well. But Georgia, with how they improved throughout the course of the year, with some of the strides we saw Gunnar Stockton make down the stretch, with how they still ran the ball rather effectively in this football game. And still, with all of that, they found a way to lose this game. That to me is very surprising. the fact that Pete Golding later in this game, is it fair to say he outcoached Kirby? He didn't not outcoach Kirby. I just thought some of the ways that this thing went down were really, really surprising on the Georgia side. And if you're a Georgia fan, there's no way you can come away from this feeling anything other than disappointed, because with the way this team closed out its season, winning the SEC championship, and then going into a game like this that looked very winnable, to kind of go out like this, even though it was very, very close and they obviously could have won, that to me, the manner in which they lost was very surprising.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, this was a back and forth affair the first time they played.
It was,
and
but here's the thing, right?
They happened to lose it this way.
It was back and forth the first time around.
Yeah.
But you brought this up earlier, how second half, they locked Trinidad Chambliss down. They started changing up their coverage.
Yeah.
And suddenly Trinidad Chambliss couldn't do a whole lot against them. So either Ole Miss learned from that, or Trinidad Chambliss got hot, or some combination of those two things. But either way, Georgia is usually really good at making those in-game adjustments to stop a guy going on a run like that. And this was an instance where we did not see that happen on maybe the biggest stage that Georgia's been on all year. And so to that end, I was quite surprised that this game took the turn that it did. Not that Ole Miss would be close, because we both expected it to be close, but the manner in which this unfolded, particularly as Trinidad Chambliss got hot and Georgia seemingly did not have an answer, because when he got the ball on that final drive, was there anybody who watched that game who didn't feel like Trinidad Chambliss was going to engineer some kind of magic? He had all the momentum. He was 13 for 13 like 5 minutes prior.
Yeah.
So for me to see the way that he was going off and continued to go off in crunch time, I don't know. That to me caught me a bit off guard.
Yeah, I'm with you. And look, even to underscore your point further, even though this was a back and forth game, a higher scoring game the first time they played, the last three opponents that Georgia did play with good offenses, Texas, Georgia Tech, and Alabama, they held to 10, 9, and 7 points, respectively.
Yeah.
So whatever you think about those three offenses, at their best, those are good offenses at their best. And Georgia held each of them down, and it just didn't seem to bother Ole Miss. Now, there is a layoff factor, but once again, Georgia was up 21-12 at halftime. So this wasn't a situation like Ohio State last night where they just couldn't get things going on offense. And it looked like they were just off. This was just a masterwork performance from Ole Miss to weather the body blows from Georgia, to weather the speed, to weather, by the way, I don't know how you feel about this, and maybe if I go back and rewatch it, I'll feel differently. I thought Ole Miss got kind of a ticky-tack defensive, like a PI there late when Georgia took a shot up the left sideline. I also kind of thought Zachariah Branch pushed off on that touchdown catch late, not called. I don't know.
And then there was the missed face mask that should have gone against Georgia. It was
the missed face mask.
Yeah.
So I think Ole Miss absorbed a good amount in this game and still was able to weather everything and win. And just, I don't know. I can't say enough good things about that performance. And the helmets looked great, right?
The helmets were pretty cool. Yeah. That was pretty neat. I mean, this was a prize fight.
Yeah.
Through and through. Both teams took a bunch of shots. Ole Miss emerges victorious by a 39-34 score, which means that your Verbo Fiesta Bowl next Thursday is going to be Ole Miss, the 6th seed in this tournament, against the Miami Hurricanes, perhaps the last team in the tournament, the number 10. Right now, at time of recording, Miami is opening up at about a 3-point favorite. That line is moving around a little bit. We'll see if it moves much more. But that, to me, is a matchup I need to think a lot more about. I know we're going to do our preview here in the next few days, and we're going to have some time to think about it. But the athleticism that I think we saw on display from Ole Miss, that we've seen all year from Ole Miss, the athleticism we see from Miami, if only on their defensive front.
Yep.
Like, there are going to be so many athletes out there on the field, a lot of speed, a lot of violent hitting on display. That, to me, features some of the most exciting players in all of college football. And I think that's going to be a hell of a matchup. Say what you want about an Indiana-Oregon rematch, but Ole Miss, Miami playing for the first time this year, That to me is going to be a hell of a fight that I'm real excited about. And frankly, like I said, I need more time to dissect how I feel about it.
Yeah. By the way, common opponent, both beat Florida. So congratulations to the Gators for their place in the college football playoff conversation. Yeah, that's going to be a great matchup. I can't wait just because, the speed of Ole Miss, and both the speed and power of Miami with what they were able to do against both Ohio State and Texas A&M. Miami, by the way, so it's Miami flying and playing in College Station, flying home to practice, flying back to play in North Texas or whatever in Jerry World, flying back to practice and then flying to Phoenix, Glendale.
Right.
It's hefty. It's
Yeah.
it's hefty travel. I don't think it'll affect Miami in the slightest just because they're well coached and have been well prepared. But that's college football playoff. It's a hefty ask.
And a really interesting contrast in the way these two teams have played thus far. Ole Miss obviously scoring a boatload of points in their first two playoff matchups. Miami scoring next to no points in both of their matchups, but leaning a little bit more on defense, arguably had a little bit of a tougher road to get there. So this is going to be a really interesting one to break down. Regardless, our Final Four is set. We've got Miami squaring off against Ole Miss. We've got your Oregon Ducks squaring off against Indiana. So for those who are watching the YouTube video, please hit subscribe. Please do support what we're doing here on the channel. Help us drive up that subscriber count. Leave your comments down below. Let us know your thoughts on this game, on really all of these games. For those of you who are used to tuning in and catching a full episode, you may know, if you are tuning in now, if you are tuning in later, that we have done a specific video immediately in the aftermath of all four of the college football playoff quarterfinal games. So for those of you who typically would watch us here on YouTube, we will make sure all those videos are linked up so you can go and piece together the episode in whichever manner you please. For those who like to listen on audio, by the way, hit follow so that you don't miss anything. We're going to piece together all the audio from all of these videos. We'll have an intro, we'll have an outro, we'll do the normal thing. It'll sound like a normal episode, but we didn't want to go back and re-record all of this stuff because you and I think, are in agreement that we do our best work here in the moment, reacting in real time to all of these games, and we didn't want to lose any of that fervor. So that's what you have to look forward to, whether you watch here on YouTube or whether you listen on audio.
Correct. Yeah. I'm still coming down from the experience of that game, and thrilled we got to watch it. It was a great one.
Again, your final score: Ole Miss 39, Miami 34. Our Final Four is set. Dan Rubenstein, there is much more football left to be played. We've got two big ones that we're going to preview here in very short order. Make sure you hit follow. Make sure you hit subscribe. In the meantime, for that guy over there, Dan, for myself, Ty, enjoy the rest of your night. As always, stay solid.